Now we are back, and I am honored because we have a Parkite legend in our midst today in studio. Not only is he a restaurateur, he's a philanthropist, a former city council member, has been in the Park City area, not to mention a developer, and most recently, he's an author. So I have Jim Doilney with us today. Jim, thank you for joining.
So honored to be here. Thank you for making time for me.
Oh, thrilled. I know you are quite the adventure enthusiast and have been for so many years. So talk to me a bit about your journey here to Park City and where you are today.
I moved here in 1974, before you were born, and basically because I decided I wanted to live in the mountains and live in a clean environment. And I like to exercise, I like to be outdoors, I want to ski. So I opened a little restaurant at the base. It's called The Corner Store. Anybody who's been to Park City's probably eaten a hamburger there. And anyway, it's still there. And I got into real estate, got into different things, got into politics, and finally, about one day when I was building homes, I decided that I wanted to build them faster so that I have more time for myself, and I would keep half the time I saved. And so the first project I built took half as long as the prior contractor had taken, and therefore I had six months, and I took half that time to travel. So for 3 months a year for the last, well, almost 40 years now, I've been traveling.
Do you have a specific time of year that you would travel, or is it just where the wind takes you?
Well, no, it's more driven by, my work. Mm-hmm. So when you're a builder, you're building, it's easy to understand, you build a house, that's the end of it. I was building projects as well as houses. And so when I had a gap in my schedule, that's when I could travel. And so time of year, I'd go whether it was cold or warm, wet or dry.
Well, speaking of adventures, now you're here to join us and talk about your most recent adventure, which is writing a book about your journey with prostate cancer and the adventures and the journey through the healing of that. So tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, what happened is about 20 years into the travel period, I developed prostate cancer. Shocking. I did what most people do when they learn they have cancer. I laid in the back of my SUV and I shivered and cried for about an hour. And then I decided that I was going to beat it. Mm-hmm. And I saw 19 doctors. The first 17 of them all were trying to butcher me or bake me or, chemically destroy me. And the 18th one told me that I could keep all my equipment. People who get prostate cancer, 190,000 men a year who get treated for prostate cancer, they say, get that cancer out of me. Well, it's not necessarily the best thing to do. Mm-hmm. And the other 25% of people who get it watch and wait. And so I found out that there was no difference in survival among people who had been treated and those who hadn't. And I thought, well, I'm going to keep my equipment because there were some things I used that equipment for I wanted to continue to use it for.
So how did you, now you did a very unconventional way of healing, and we had talked prior to this a bit about stem cell and the research that you've done with that. So tell me about how you decided to do an unconventional way of healing.
Well, my travels took me to places nobody goes and saw people nobody knows, and so when I came in to try to deal with my cancer, I noticed that everybody was trying to sell me, if you go to Midas, you're going to get a muffler. If you go to a surgeon, you're going to get surgery. And then I noticed that everybody they referred me to was part of their network. And I was going, this is kind of an inside deal. I think I'm going to look elsewhere. And that's kind of what led me into my approach, which was systemic. And the 18th doctor was a guy who said I could keep all my equipment, continue to live normally, although he did make me a temporary woman for about 13 months to control hormones. And, and I managed through the years to manage the cancer. And then finally, a new technique became available, which I think is going to replace open surgery completely, which has to do with MRI-guided lasers or something called HIFU, high-intensity focused ultrasound, that you do little parts of your body at a time, and you can emulsify tissue and ablate tumors. Anyway,
Yeah,
I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you absolutely did. That's very fascinating. Now, the book is not only about your healing and your medical journey, but it's also about your adventure. So tell us about the first adventure you went on right after you found out you were diagnosed.
The first adventure was actually before I was formally diagnosed, but I knew I had trouble, and that was, I went biking in South America, in Chile and Argentina, over the Andes, and I was on a freighter coming back from Puerto Natales because that was the best way to go, and I had to urinate all night long, and I couldn't get in and out of this triple tier cot system quick enough to go, you know, and I was going, I got to do something about this urination. So the first symptom is extraordinary need to urinate. And so I kind of knew I had cancer. That was it. But I also, when I got formally diagnosed, the next day I said, hey, I've been planning a bike trip, so I biked from, what's it called, Monticello to Manzanillo, Mexico. So it was about 1,100 miles.
Wow.
And, you know, you just can't give up when somebody tells you have bad news, you know.
Sure. So how long did it take you to bike the 1,100 miles?
20 days.
20 days, wonderful.
Yeah,
and so you managed to continue adventure all through your treatment, and I'm sure there were lows and highs during all of that.
Yeah, there were some times I couldn't go, but for the most part, you can. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. That goes for beating cancer or traveling.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now talk to me about what you're doing current day. Do you have any travels planned? Are you a spokesperson, advocate for health and wellness for men?
Well, the hope is that if I get enough profile time like this, I'll become an influencer, because I really would like to make men aware that they don't have to get maimed. They're being duped in the United States, in my opinion. And in some other countries, people just don't even think about these kind of things that we do routinely. Mm-hmm. So in terms of travel, I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro this summer with the guy. I'm 74. This guy will be 86 when he summits. He'll be the oldest man to ever summit. But I'm kind of training for that a little bit.
Wonderful. Now, how are you training for that?
Well, I have Pelotons, and I ski almost every day. So that's been what I'm doing. In the summer, I'll start running.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, that's very exciting. Will you be documenting your journey?
Absolutely.
Good, good. Good. Well, I know it's been wonderful to chat with you today and to talk about the book. So tell us the title of your book and where we can get it.
You can get it on Amazon. It's called Riding the Scalpel, which is intended to make you squeamish thinking of your perineum, because you're in danger if you go into a doctor and you have cancer, prostate cancer, you better think twice. So you can get it at Dolly's or Amazon.
Wonderful. Well, I'll have to venture down to Dolly's and check it out on display and get a couple of copies. I think it's definitely important to increase conversation and awareness about taking care of your body when something doesn't feel right. So, Jim, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time here, Kimberly.
Absolutely. It's been wonderful to speak with you. Now, we will be right back after this commercial break with a few more interesting topics to wrap up our show this morning. Thanks for joining us.